Live streaming is on.
Holy cow, it worked.
Oh, wow. All right.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's episode of Paranormal Encyclopedia, Vampires Gone Wild. We meant to start at 7, but the internet has not been cooperative. Just give me a moment while I put links up, and then we're good to go.
Yeah, we're actually thrilled to be here at all. We
Yes.
thought this wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this one more time, and then I quit, and then it worked, and it's like, okay, cool. But, what was I going to say? There we go. This will be a Brian-centric episode, ladies and gentlemen, because, I know a bit. Brian is definitely the resident vampire expert, and knows far more than I do.
He says that, but I want to make a point that all of the information and all of the stories and folklore and stuff that I'm about to talk about and present is all readily available on the internet. If you can, if you can do a little Googling and look up the right websites and sort of do some cross-referencing, this is all out there. This isn't me, having ancient books of lore or any specialized knowledge. This is just I spent a bunch of weekends looking this stuff up and writing it down.
First of all, that describes just switch out books for internet, and that describes 90% of the experts on folklore that's older than the last 100 years. I mean, the only exception you really are going to run into are folklorists that actually go out and talk to people.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. There's at least some, there's a little more, I feel there's a little more legitimacy to someone like that than somebody like me that's just kind of an interested amateur.
True, but the only time we've had much in the way of vampire stories in the United States is 100 to 200 years ago. So it's not like there's living people to go talk to. I mean, there are certainly still people today who believe in vampires, both in the U.S. and in general. Hello, Teresa Hall. But in the U.S. in particular, it's there just aren't that many living people that have anything in the way of you know what I mean.
Yeah. Oh no, I get you. It's also, well, what I've found that's kind of funny is even in other countries, it's hard to separate out. You see in so many bits of world folklore, you see kind of an influence of Western culture.
Brian?
Yeah.
Can you adjust your camera because you're cut off from the eyes up, and it looks really weird.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, is that any better?
Yeah, you're there. We're good now.
Okay.
So let's get this started with proper introductions before we dive in, because we're already diving in.
Yeah.
But for those of you who don't know us, my name is Kevin Mears. I'm a demonologist and paranormal investigator, hence my title, Paranormal Encyclopedia. I'm joined by my co-host, Brian McKinley. Brian, introduce yourself.
I'm Brian McKinley. I'm a author of vampire fiction, sometimes called the Godfather of Vampire Thrillers by a very charitable review. I'm just generally interested in vampires and have been for many, many years.
Which is how we met, in fact.
Yeah. Ended up being at the same convention, and I did a talk that Kevin attended, and while we were waiting for that to get set up, we got to talking and then hung out afterwards.
Yeah, particularly because, funny enough, we had both submitted similar talks to the same convention.
Ah, yeah.
Because Amisha, and Amisha's sister Kat were doing the panel on romantic vampires.
Right. Yeah, I remember. And then you invited me to join in that panel.
Yeah, because okay, this guy knows more than we do. Let's get him involved. But okay, Brian. So I'll let you take it away. This is your area of expertise.
Okay. So let's see. I've kind of got this broken down into I've created different like categories for vampires based on certain things. But these first ones are sort of vampiric fairy kind of creatures. Um, because in their pre-Christian earliest forms, a lot of what we think of as fairy creatures or fae had distinctly vampiric characteristics. The first one I'll talk about is called the Leon Shi, which appear as beautiful women, often invisible to everyone but their intended victim, and they seduce men and try to cause them to fall in love with them. If successful, the Leon Shi will drain the man of life energy during sex, similar to a succubus, and will feed him small amounts of her blood so that he is inspired to write love poetry to her. Slowly over time, he is drained to a husk. If, however, the man does not fall in love with her, in some versions of the story, the Leon Shi will strangle him and drain his body of blood. But in other versions, the more interesting idea of the legend is that by resisting her seduction, it causes her to fall madly in love with her intended victim and serve him as a slave. So that's kind of a different, take. And rather than simply drinking the blood like most vampires, the Alanshi has a element of what I call the vampiric witch to her, where she keeps her victim's blood in a large red cauldron, which becomes the source of her ability to shapeshift into animals, become invisible, and remain youthful. The word she in spelled Sidhe. And this creature's name is a word traditionally associated with the Fae in Irish folklore and actually refers to the ancient burial mounds that Celtic people have used for centuries. These mounds were believed to be the gateways between the land of the living and the dead, and some early beliefs about the origin of the Fae, rather than mentioning Arcadia, they talk about the underworld as being where the Fae come from. Variation on this theme is the Bavanshi, which is more of a Scottish version. Technically a revenant. This is created when a woman dies in childbirth and the body rises as a fae. This vampire was unusual in that it would attach itself to a specific family and would live among them normally. In fact, prior to the arrival of Christianity in Scotland, it was considered a sign of status to have one in the family, which is kind of interesting. Mostly a precursor to the Banshee, the Bavanshi warned of impending death by wailing, and if a group of them came together to wail, then the death would be of a great person. After Christianity...
I'm sorry. I was going to say that is the classic Banshee, and it's worth noting with the She, one of the earlier, I think the earlier spelling of Banshee is Bean She, Beenen, and then Sidhe.
That would make sense, yeah. So after Christianity took hold, the Bavanshi took on a more evil role. She began to be described as a beautiful, tall, pale woman in a green dress, which hid cloven hooves. And in this form, the vampire would appear to lone shepherds or travelers as a woman they knew or lusted after and would lead them away to dance. And once the man was exhausted by dancing, the Bavanshi would attack and drink his blood. They could also sometimes transform into crows, and like most fairies, it was considered to be vulnerable to iron.
That's really interesting. Just one I'm thinking of, the Banshee particularly has a connection to a Celtic goddess known as the Morrigan,
Yeah,
who's strongly associated with crows.
yeah, I think there's definitely that overlap.
There's also an folk tale for urban legend, however you want to put it, from America, of the woman who meets a very handsome man in a dancing hall, and they dance together. And things are going really, really well, and then people start screaming in terror when they realize that he doesn't have shoes and feet; he has cloven hooves, which is usually interpreted as it's just she's dancing with the devil. But it's interesting how that relates kind of to this Babanshi myth.
Yeah, yeah. The addition of the cloven hooves. I don't know if that was just because of the pagan aspect, or if they were trying to link, if the early Christians were trying to link the creature, this vampire, to the devil
Probably.
in that way. There's another fun one that I think I've told you about that you enjoyed. The Alp
Yes.
from Germany is considered a demon, but that's because in a lot of ways they're fae and their demons are closely related in German folklore. Uh, the creature is described in many ways due to its ability to shapeshift, but its one consistent feature is the white hat or cap of concealment that it wears because it is the source of its power. The Alp is known for creeping into the beds of women at night and drinking blood from their nipples. It also enjoys breast milk if the woman is lactating. The crushing weight of the Alp on the chest causes horrible nightmares to the victim, which had a name, Alpdruk, or Elf Dream. And that's because, obviously, the word Alp is the basis for the English word elf. And the resemblance can be seen a bit more in some of the Alp's more mischievous attributes. In addition to its bloodlust, they were also known to be responsible for knotting people's hair while they slept or rediapering babies with soiled diapers.
Which is very classic fairy folklore.
Yes. Not even livestock were safe from the terror of the Alp, as it was known to attack horses, geese, and rabbits, crushing them to death under its weight. The fun thing about the Alp, the thing that I find the most amusing, is how easily the creature was warded off. How, for such a powerful creature, if you were to keep your shoes beside the bed, pointed at the door while you slept, that would work. Protective wards, prayers, and pentagrams, and keeping a mirror on your chest while you slept would also ward the creature off. Or if you could manage to steal the hat off its head, the Alp would lose all of its power, and it could be killed by putting a lemon in its mouth.
Lemon, the natural enemy of the vampire.
Yes, the only vampire known to be killed by citrus. Which I gotta wonder how that came about, because lemons I don't think are native to Germany, so that had to be an invention or an addition later on when more fruits and stuff began to be imported.
No, one of our recurring listeners, Teresa Hall, comments that Mac Dubshi was her granny's maiden name in Gaelic.
Okay.
Son of the Dark Fairy, apparently.
Nice.
So you're a fairy. I kind of long suspected that, Teresa.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Apparently, my actual last name, McKinley, translates back into something like McFinley, which means son of the fair king. So, yeah, like Finley was some kind of Irish.
Getting boxed in by fairies. I'm screwed.
Getting Celtic folklore, yeah. Well, no, mine doesn't have a fairy connotation. It just means that somewhere along the lines I may have been descended from royalty.
Nice. Although we're not going to start calling you King Brian,
No,
so
no,
don't get any crazy ideas.
I think the bloodline is far too diluted by this point.
But no, the Alp just interests me because I know we've talked about this before. You don't necessarily agree with me, but when you read Doctor Sleep by Stephen King and the creatures in that
Yeah.
have a very vampire-like component to them,
Oh yeah.
and their leader, Rose the Hat, with the one tooth, which I believe is another aspect. The big tooth is another aspect of it for Alp lore, isn't it?
I don't no, I don't think that's the Alp, but there is a different. I think the what the hell is it called? It's another one that starts with A. But I
Quite
think it's one
likely.
of the Filipino Aswang. I think that's the one with the single like big tooth.
I don't think I'm thinking of the Oswong with that part of it, but we both know there are tons of vampire legends all over Europe. I may just be thinking of something else.
Yeah.
But that Rose the Hat only has the one tooth, has a vampire component, and a very big deal is made of her top hat, which contains some of her at least some of her magic and power. I always thought that maybe King was at least a little inspired by that.
It could be.
The only way to ever know for sure would be to drag him on the show and ask him. But
yeah, good luck.
yeah,
I would love to have the opportunity to interview him, but
I feel like if we could find a way to get to like through the publicists and stuff, there's at least a chance because he's known to be a pretty nice guy and approachable.
yeah, that's
private
true.
and very reserved. He doesn't necessarily want lots of attention in interviews, but he's supposed to be a very nice guy.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe one day one of us will run into him in a bookstore by accident or something, and we'll get to ask him.
Well, supposedly, I had a fan of my novel say that she sent that she corresponded with Stephen King at one point, and she sent him a link to my book, and that he read it and told her that he liked it. I don't have any actual proof of that because I haven't been able to get back in contact with this woman since she told me that. But it's like,
well, you could try running him down. Look,
if it's true, I would love to believe it. I'd love to believe that happened.
I tried to reach out to him once, but if you go to his website, there is information to like reach his publicist, and you can always just try to say, "Hey, look, I heard a rumor. I wrote this book. I heard a rumor. Is there any chance he'd give us an interview?" I can't guarantee it would work, but it does. You never know. One universal rule I've learned in my life is you'll be surprised what works if you try it.
True enough. Yeah, I guess in the fact that he would only have to like kind of zoom in. He wouldn't even have to leave his home.
It's like he can pick any day or time. I will make it work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll work around his schedule.
If he wants me to drive to freaking Maine, I'll drive to Maine and do it there. I'll do it. It's like, no. If he's willing to give me an interview, he can set whatever terms he wants, and if I can meet them, I will.
Exactly.
I'm not ashamed to say that. But we're getting sidetracked. But please continue.
All right. So jumping away from the British Isles to India, which has some really cool folklore, obviously. There is a vampire called the Vital who straddles a couple of those categories that I tried to create for vampires. Mm-hmm. It's a spirit that possesses and animates corpses, and it also, in many tales, has sorceress powers. So it's kind of both a vampiric witch, as well as being a revenant, as well as being a kind of demonic spirit being. So it's a little bit of all three of those. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Vital are said to be a race of divine vampiric beings who appear half human and half bat. However, like other vampires, the Vital can possess a human corpse in order to disguise itself and uses fresh blood to keep the body from decaying. It tends to feed on the intoxicated, the insane, and others who society would not be likely to believe, and apparently can enter a home by use of a magic thread stuck down the chimney. I always said, so those of us with central air are safe.
Yep.
So in some versions, it consumes not only blood, but also intestines and excrement as well, which is kind of nasty, but similar to some Chinese folklore. With
That really fascinates me, though,
the
just
underworld.
because we have this association that Stoker created the connection between vampires and bats.
Yeah.
But
I
yet
had thought that for a long time, but apparently not.
The Vital connects the two of them.
Yeah.
And
There's also later on, there's a couple of African vampires that that blend bats and vampiric traits.
There's also I want to say Kamotas. It's a South American demonic bat deity of death that also feeds on blood.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously South America would make sense because that's where you have actual vampire bats.
Whereas you don't anywhere else in the world, which is what makes it so interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, so aside from all of this, the Vital is far from a mindless killer like so many other vampires. Its most famous appearance is in the tale of King Vikram, in which one of these creatures thwarts 24 attempts to capture it by telling tales which all end in a riddle. I'm still a little unsure about how that works, but basically, like as long as the king correctly answers the riddle, like the Vital is able to like move away from him. So I don't know why the king doesn't just not answer, but I guess he has to answer the riddle correctly if he knows the answer. I'm not sure about that part.
Well, he's a king. There's a whole pride issue of I can't just not answer.
Well, yeah, he was also supposed to be super wise. Like he was this famous king for his wisdom.
That's really interesting.
Later on, that same vampire ends up becoming like a companion of the king and gives him advice on how to turn the tables on a trap which the king's enemies have planned for him, because the vampire like has seen the future and knows that it's going to happen.
Which might be the answer to why the king indulged the vampires. Maybe if he's supposed to be so wise, he had this sense, this foresight that the vampire might one day be useful to him.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're kind of different and neat.
That is really cool.
Yeah, in some versions, they go away from the divine vampiric spirit thing, and they say that a Vital is created when a child dies and doesn't receive proper funeral rites. And this is obviously similar to what you find in a lot of places like the Greeks, China, the Balkans, and of course, one of the most famous in China, the Jiangxi, the infamous hopping vampire, star of stage and screen. One of the most distinctive and memorable tales from around the globe, the Jiangxi is created in a number of ways. If a cat jumps over a fresh corpse, if moonlight shines down on a fresh corpse, or if black magic is used, it can create one of these creatures. The idea being that the Chinese believe that you have various souls in your body, and the higher, purer soul leaves your body and goes away to heaven or whatever when you die, but you have a lower soul that contains kind of all the impurities and all of the evil within you, and that stays in your body. And this is the soul that can get energized by these methods and allow a body to sort of reanimate.
The Egyptians have a similar idea with the multiple souls, or at least multiple facets of the soul.
Yeah, they do. I wonder if that's a coincidence or if there was some cross pollination.
I don't know, though. I remember reading once that the one part of the soul that stays in the tomb, and the reason for all the elaborate preparations, needs to be fed. You have to leave offerings for it. And if you don't leave the offerings for it, it's supposed to turn kind of nasty.
Yeah, yeah. I think I don't remember what that's the Ka
It's the Ba or the Ka. I don't remember
or
which
the
one.
Ka. Yeah, one of the two. One is the good soul and one is the bad soul, kind of like in Chinese mythology.
And really, given Egyptian mythology, can you blame the bad soul for wanting to stay on Earth? Since in Egyptian mythology, when you die, if your heart's too heavy, you get devoured by the crocodile creature.
Yeah, yeah. Your best bet is you basically go to another world that seems to be very much like the regular world that you just left, and you kind of continue on living a life over there in whatever social status you occupied in life. So if you were a servant, you get to continue being a servant to the royals in the afterlife.
Lucky you.
Yeah, that's why they buried some of their servants and stuff with them.
This
But
all just makes me think of the thing that nobody thinks about with the whole your soul gets devoured in Egyptian and some other mythologies. It's like, so does that destroy your soul or is the soul eternal? Because if the soul's eternal, does that mean that eventually you're going to be excreted out the other end?
yeah, I don't know.
Um, our friend Patrick Thomas actually deals with that in some of his stories that take place in hell, where yes, you get excreted out. Eventually, you regenerate because souls are immortal, which means it can happen again. So you may spend a fraction of your eternal existence as, for example, in Patrick's book, sentient dragon poop, which is not something I particularly would want to spend my existence as. I don't know about it.
No, that's
Maybe there are people who would. Chorophilia, not going to kink shame, but
pretty terrible. Yeah. So yeah, the fun thing, this might be, I don't know if this comes from European folklore that they kind of took, but apparently the Jiangxi does fear running water. Um, which that I always wondered if that was something that they invented and later became a part of Western vampire lore, or if they imported that from Western vampire lore and just incorporated it into their stories.
there is actually the third possibility that it's just an idea that both cultures developed. Because
Yeah.
certain symbolisms are very common. Why is hell flame, and why, for that matter, is a way to kill a lot of things? Burn it.
Mm.
Fire's purifier. What do you do with the diseased dead bodies? You burn them so they don't infect other people.
Yeah,
There
that's
is a
true.
logic behind why that's a myth.
Yeah. Running water is also kind of a pure
Yeah.
idea, purifying idea. Yeah, so the fun thing, the reason it hops, it can't move in anything but a straight line. And it also has a compulsion to stop and count rice, peas, or iron fillings that are thrown in its direction.
Which is
Um,
also in European folklore.
yeah, this I think started with the Chinese and became something with European vampires later. Because with them, it's very specific. Like they used to spread rice on their stoop or their doorway or whatever, because the idea was that the creature would stop and have to sit there and count the grains of rice, and it would be sitting there doing that until the sun rose, at which time it would have to go back to its grave.
Is it the whole hopping thing also why a lot of traditional Chinese homes have winding
Yes,
paths?
that's why they don't go in a straight line. Yeah, they curve to make it more difficult for a creature like that. Yeah, what's funny is the whole idea really came about because of the way that people that handle corpses in China used to transport the dead bodies. They
Mhm.
would tie them to poles, and it'd be like two guys carrying a bunch of corpses hanging from these poles. But with the way they would walk, it would look like the poles were just kind of bouncing up and down. So it looked like a row of corpses being led hopping down the street by, by some guy in the lead,
Huh.
who they assumed, I guess, was a sorcerer.
Darn sorcerers.
Yeah.
No, I knew people back many years ago who, and I'm in no way claiming I believed this, but they claimed to have met vampires.
Oh,
And that the whole recurring myth of having to count seeds and iron fillings and all of that actually all originated from the same vampire who traveled around a lot and had obsessive compulsive disorder.
yeah. one obsessive compulsive vampire just started the whole deal.
Skepticism aside, I have to say I love that explanation. It's like I'm here for that.
It makes a little sense.
The other one I've always enjoyed, and I'm sure you've seen the scene, if not the movie, the sequel to Dracula 2000 actually
Yes.
brings up vampires being able to count seeds.
Yes, I remember
Only
that
movie I
scene
know of
where,
that does.
yeah, he breaks all the knots. He count. They throw like the things in the air, and he's like 1,327,000. Like it doesn't say that he can't do it quickly.
Yeah,
I
like
was like, oh
he
shit.
does it. He does it in bullet time.
Exactly. I was like, wow, that's actually really, that was probably the cleverest part of that whole movie was that
And
one.
it wasn't that good a movie.
No, sadly, it really wasn't. It was almost like they tried to do like Reservoir Dogs, throw a vampire into it, and and see what happened.
I will
'Cause
say, the original Dracula 2000 I enjoy because I thought it was a relatively clever take.
it had an interesting kernel of an idea. I just think the whole story and execution of it was just done so kind of run of the mill. Like they they had a really great idea to start from, and then they really just didn't take it anywhere interesting. They just went all the usual places except for the reveal at the end where it was like, ha ha, here's our big twist.
I'll grant you. I mean, it's. I'm not saying it's that good a movie, but it's something there are movies that are genuinely good, but there are also movies you just kind of enjoy.
Yeah.
And I would put it in that category. Not even so bad it's good. It's like no, you take it for what it is. It's a vampire action flick with a little interesting twist at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd give you that.
It's like if you're the one that did a slightly similar idea that I thought was much better is the third Librarians movie,
Oh yeah.
or specifically for those of you in the audience who don't know, the Librarian movies are a series of movies that were done on a cable channel. I forget which one.
TNT.
Yeah, TNT. With this guy who works for the Metropolitan Library in New York, going around the world, being Indiana Jones, collecting various magical artifacts.
Yeah.
The first one,
Except it's Noah Wiley being Indiana Jones.
yeah, and he's far more nerd and far less badass, less like highly competent badass.
Exactly.
But in the first movie, he's going after the Spear of Destiny. In the second movie, he's going after the key of the Solomon's mines and the key of Solomon. And then the third movie, he's going after a silver chalice that was made when they melted down the 30 pieces of silver that Judas sold Jesus out for.
Hmm.
And that Judas, in this continuity and in Dracula 2000, and for that matter, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina brings it up as well, Judas is the original vampire.
Hmm.
So the chalice gives great power. The Russians in the movie are trying to bring back Dracula because they want, basically, they think Russian, and we're not going into real world politics, but the Russian politicians at the time were weak. They needed a stronger, firmer hand. Well, so let's bring back Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah.
It is a really cute movie. It's very much set in, I want to say, a post-Katrina New Orleans, and it's a love letter to the city.
Hmm.
I recommend it. I recommend the whole series. It's good fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember watching the TV series that they did
Also really good, and I enjoy
afterwards. Yeah,
enormously.
good stuff.
Which includes the throwaway line to the third movie, where like, so is Dracula real? Is vampires real? And it's like, vampires are real. Dracula's not real because I killed him. And also, I think one of its great strengths, it doesn't take itself too seriously.
Yeah.
And that's important in a funny movie.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, they were always good with the humor in those.
Yep. Like, I fought evil in many forms, approximately 357. But anyway, to continue.
Yes. Okay. So let's see. The next one I have is the Draugr of Iceland.
Oh yes.
Yeah, a fearsome revenant that exists solely to guard its treasure, which Viking warriors were traditionally buried with. The Draugrs could do interesting tricks, like increasing their body weight and growing or shrinking. They could move freely through earth and stone, conjure storms, and see the future. What's more, Draugrs were said to be impervious to mundane weapons, and that the only way they could be killed was by being wrestled into submission by a hero and then beheaded. Some scholars believe that Grendel of the Beowulf saga was a Draugr, and others think that we got the concept of the ogre, the troll, and the dragon from these legends as well.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. I can't speak any more to that because all I saw was a note that those might have been historical, like bases, but they might not be.
I certainly don't buy the idea that we get dragons from the Draugr just because dragon folklore is far older.
Mm.
I mean, there are dragon stories going back to Mesopotamia, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
I don't know enough. I mean, all I know, everything I know about ogres is that it's the French word for giant.
Huh.
And I know all I know, and I don't know much about trolls other than my understanding is they're kind of magical beings, and they're very intelligent. Not like what you get in Dungeons and Dragons or Lord of the Rings. They're actually highly intelligent and dangerous. They're not just big dumb brutes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Teresa says that she's going to ask Santa for a dragon.
Good luck with that.
Although who doesn't want a dragon?
I have nowhere to keep a dragon.
Depends on the dragon. Many of them are shapeshifters.
Oh boy.
Or get a Chinese one that can live in the land under your house.
Oh yeah, there we go. So let's see. Going back to demonic and witch type of vampires. There's one known as the Empusa, which were the demon spawn of the witch goddess Hecate, who acted as her attendants. They were all red-haired, and they possessed the legs of mules and an insatiable appetite for human flesh. They had the ability, of course, to appear as beautiful women in order to seduce men, who they would drain of their life energy during sex before consuming them. But luckily, if a man was able to resist the allure of the Impusa's disguise, it was easy to run away from them, because their weird mule legs made them very slow. So,
Is it me, or are we uncovering a not well kept secret about men's issues with women and how many of these vampires suck the energy out of men during sex?
oh God, yeah, no. There's you could get really Freudian with all of these fair. I mean, a lot of folklore kind of gives you insights into psychology and the sort of the cultural fears of a given society. And it is funny, yeah, how many of these, how many vampires are made from either women who died in childbirth or women who are witches and are evil and, desire nothing more than to drink men's blood or suck their life force out of them.
Teresa comments that she loves learning more about Hecate,
Ah,
who is an interesting goddess figure.
yeah,
Goddess of the underworld, goddess of witchcraft, dark but not necessarily evil.
yeah.
Again, it's Greek mythology. The Greek gods are all kind of complicated. Although I find it funny, it just makes me think as well of, speaking of men with weird issues with women, I wonder if the Impusa red hair thing relates to, there's a line in the infamous book, The Malleus Maleficarum, that it is the author's opinion that all women with a certain shade of red hair are vampires.
Yeah, that's actually, it's funny how often red hair pops up as a sign of either being a witch or a warlock or a vampire or some kind of there's always some sort of evil attached to the idea of redheads.
I mean, the obvious solution I would think of with a lot of cultures would be to associate it with the Vikings and their tendency to invade. But, I mean, we're talking about Greek stories with the Impusa. That's older than the Vikings.
Yeah.
Though, funny enough, on the positive side of redheads, the one, as much as I love Chris Hemsworth, the one mistake that Marvel, both in the comics and in the movies, makes is Thor is very much a redhead. For God's sakes, his nickname in folklore is Thor the Red. It's a hint there, people. I've heard different explanations of that. The one I've usually heard is that it was basically he was meant to be a redhead, and there was a mistake with the coloring, or a financial thing with the blonde being cheaper than red in terms of color. I honestly don't know.
It's possible. I know the original appearance of the Hulk. The reason he has green skin is apparently some sort of printer mistake. Like he was originally supposed to be gray. Yeah, he was originally supposed to be gray skinned, but somehow the printer got the wrong instructions or something, and he was rendered green.
Also makes me think of my favorite story from one of my favorite television shows. When people think of Doctor Who, the symbol that is most iconic to the show is the ridiculously long scarf that was between 9 and 22 feet long, depending on which season you watched. And the reason he had a ridiculously long scarf is actually really funny, because they basically handed the costume woman a whole bunch of yarn and said, "We want him to have a scarf." They didn't tell her what color to make it. They didn't tell her how long to make it. They just said, "Make him a scarf." So she took all of the yarn they gave her and did a single scarf.
Made the biggest damn scarf ever. Yeah.
Yep. And I want to say, a 12-foot version of it packed away somewhere.
Yeah, I remember those being very popular.
It's all. It's how many scarves can you name that you could also use as like rope to climb out of a window or something?
True.
But so Impulsa,
Yeah.
also a villain in the Percy Jackson novels.
Yeah, it makes sense. They use a lot of folklore and mythology in those.
Specifically, as I recall, they were cheerleaders.
Ironic.
Soul-sucking women and they're cheerleaders. Yeah, that tracks with at least with stereotypes of high school.
Okay, so I have here we go. I have a couple that are not stereotypical, like women succubus creatures or anything like that. These
awesome.
are
Let's go there.
These are the weirdo creatures. First of all, you have the kappa from Japan.
Oh yes,
which are these little green childlike turtle people who live in lakes and ponds and can be appeased with cucumbers or blood. Normally, they attack livestock who come to the water to drink, much like alligators and crocodiles. However, these most Japanese of monsters are also sticklers for courtesy, and if one comes out of the water to attack a human, the person should quickly bow to it. The kappa will pause to return the bow, at which point the water will pour out of its bowl-like head and render it powerless. As mentioned before, you can also give them cucumbers, even going so far as to write your family name on a cucumber to gain protection for all the members of your family. Far from mindless, ravenous killers, they are also reputed to be skilled in medicine and teaching and are known to honor contracts that are made with them. That's a
known for taking part in Triwizard tournaments.
Yeah.
Since they do in fact appear in Harry Potter.
Oh boy. Okay, and then two of the strangest, you have the Filipino Aswang, which I mentioned earlier, and my favorite, the Australian Yaramayahu. The Aswang is a vampire that hides in a human guise during the day and then transforms into a bird in order to hunt. It flies to the house of its intended victim, usually a child, and perches on the roof directly over the spot where its prey lays sleeping. Then it sends its long tube-like tongue into the house. Using a barb on the end of its tongue, it pierces a small hole in the flesh and sips its meal. When the Aswang is finished, it then flies back to its home, where it will breastfeed its own children.
Okay, then.
Yeah. But the oddest vampire has to be the Yaramayahu, and not just because of the name. It's an ambush predator that hides up in a tree. It's a short, red-skinned man with an enormous head and suckers on its hands and feet. It hides from the sun and generally attacks at night, and grabs its prey. It sucks their blood through its hand and foot suckers. Then it swallows the body whole. But the best part is, sometime later, it vomits the person back up completely whole and alive. And when that happens, you get a little shorter each time. Each time it eats you and vomits you back up, you get shorter until you become the same size as the vampire, at which point your skin turns red and you become one of them.
Australia.
Yes.
The
Australian outback. I read that when I was like, what? That's the nuttiest vampire I've ever heard of.
Yeah, it's like, nope, this one wins.
I mean, he
might even beat my personal favorite vampire for weirdness.
Yeah, even the Penangolans, like, at least that's got some traditional kind of elements. The Yaramayahu is just like, what the fuck?
It sucks your blood out, it eats you, it spits you up, and you're shorter.
Yeah.
It'll do it again and again and again until eventually you're its size and you turn into one of it.
Yeah. Which I don't know. I mean, to me, how that would happen, because the first time I got spit back up, I'm running for the hills. Like, I'm out of there. That thing is not going to get a chance to eat me a second time. So I don't know. I don't know how it gets this like repeat feeding. I don't know how
But I
that.
was is it like does it do it over and over and over again, or does it like hunt you down and come back
I
days
think it
later?
hunts. I think it hunts you down. Like, it's supposed to
Yeah.
be kind of an ambush predator.
So yeah, the answer to me seems to be if it's known to live in Australia, the first time you get eaten, you run for the nearest freaking airport and book a flight the hell out of there.
Exactly. Yeah. No more problem.
I don't think they issue, driver's licenses to red demonic vampire creatures yet. And you know that if you just fly the U.S., it'll never get through TSA.
Yeah.
TSA saving the world from vampires since. Oh God, that just reminds me. Have you watched the show Inside Job yet?
Inside job.
It's an animated series on Netflix.
Oh yeah, that's the one about the deep state.
Yes,
Yeah, I have not. I've seen the commercials for it. I have not actually watched it.
you need to watch it. But one, it made me think of that because the second season just dropped recently,
Yeah,
and there's an episode making fun of of how even the deep state has to go through TSA.
nice.
And then another episode where the main character's mother is currently dating Keanu Reeves. And the rumor is confirmed. Keanu Reeves is a vampire.
Of course, that's well known. They have photographic evidence.
Yeah. Reeves, Nicolas Cage, what's his name? Leonardo DiCaprio, because like I never ages. It's a cabal of vampires all in
Yeah.
Hollywood. It's like, yeah, that tracks.
So let's see. There's a couple. I only have a couple more.
Okay.
These are kind of African, so they're kind of interesting.
I will say we're unfortunately running out of time.
That's why I was looking to see how many more I have, and I only have like 3 more.
Okay, we
I
got to be
think I
quick
can
because
get
of
through them
the
quickly. And
five. We got about 5 minutes, unfortunately.
yeah,
But go ahead.
all right. So there's one from Africa called the Odds, ADZE, which is its natural form is of a firefly or a ball of light, but it takes possession of the body of a tribal sorcerer. And witches, once it does this, they have the power to astral project, speak to the dead, and use spirits to harm crops, livestock, and other people. They are attracted to the blood of the tribe's most beautiful children, but can be staved off with offerings of coconut milk and palm oil. But apparently, yeah, there's no general reliable way to detect an Oddsy, but it can be captured outside of its human form and destroyed.
Okay.
There's another witch vampire called the Obaifu, which is born a witch vampire. So when it's just naturally occurring, it drains its victims in a long and painful process that can take days or weeks, which I guess is probably like they explain diseases and things with something like this. But it leaves its body to accomplish these things during the night, and it can transform itself into a variety of animals with the help of a magical elixir. Then there's the Oxyman, which is another witch vampire with some unusual traits. This one actually has the connection to the bat. It can take the form of a bat to scout villages and find victims. In this case, that victim is someone sleeping with a foot exposed so that the vampire can cut a small hole in the big toe and drink its blood. So it's a vampire with a foot fetish.
Don't kink shame. Not even the undead.
Nope. And then, of course, finally, there's the Penangolin, which we've talked about at length. But yeah, that's the head that separates itself from its body and goes flying around looking for victims.
Dragging its entrails behind it.
Dragging its entrails. And yeah, if you put like thorns on your windows so that it'll get caught in them when it tries to come for you through the window. And it's just all kinds of crazy. What I love is that there's no actual, they don't talk about any kind of way to actually get rid of a Penangolin. Like the best that you can do is you can go to its house and knock over the big jar of vinegar that it uses to
Pickles the body in, yeah,
to reduce the swelling of the entrails so that it'll fit back in the body. And it's like, okay, so once you
now
do
what?
yeah, what do you do? It's like, okay, so the thing can't go back into its body, so it just flies around and glares at you, or I mean, you just like
Kill it with fire.
Yeah, smack it with a baseball bat. I don't know, but yeah, those are my weird non-Western vampires. Managed to get through all of them in one sitting, which is kind of cool. When I saw how many I had, I was like, wow, this might actually take more than one session, but we managed to get through them.
No, but I'm actually quite impressed at your ability to be concise and our near miraculous ability to stay on point with this.
Yeah. Well, see, again, this is why it helped that I have written notes.
Yeah.
If I was trying to do all this just from memory and we were just casually talking, I would have lost the train of thought a long time back.
But no, this was fun. You did good at taking the wheel.
Oh, thank you.
But we are unfortunately coming up on the end of our night. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank everybody who we had. I want to say 3 to 4 people listening in at various points in the evening. I want to thank all of you. I hope you enjoyed it. Anyone who winds up watching this in the future, welcome to the show. We broadcast live it's going to be Wednesdays. Honest, I swear. Real life just keeps getting in the way.
Yeah.
At 7 p.m. Eastern time. Yes. Please, if you enjoy what we're doing, like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends. Consider throwing us a little bit of money at patreon.com/demonology. Links in the description. Money is always appreciated. Brian and I work regular jobs. This does not fund itself, unfortunately. Nor is ghost hunting a paying gig. Because I've had people ask me that before. It's like, no, I don't take money from clients.
Yeah.
Teresa says
it's got to be obvious how much money we spend on production here. So
yeah.
So obviously, we need help.
Well, we do, but what does psychiatry have to do with the show?
Yeah, a lot. We get into that topic all the time.
Fair enough. But Teresa Hall said, and I wanted to share for you. Brian, thanks. That was great.
Well, thank you.
The support's always appreciated, Teresa. It's always good to see you here in our chat. But that's going to pretty much do it for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank everybody for listening. This has been your co-host for the evening, at least, Kevin Mears, the Paranormal Encyclopedia, and your host, the star of the show,
Brian McKinley.
Saying good night and God bless.
And keep your fangs sharp.
Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week. I hope.
Yeah, no guarantees.
I mean, you're right. It's the trailer.